Hello everybody, today I want to discuss Doctor Who Season 10, the classic season of the show, Jon Pertwee's fourth one as the Doctor. There's going to be some mild spoilers about things that happen in here, and also you should know that my opinion on this season is entirely my own. We might not agree about Season 10, but as long as we're having fun discussing it, that's all that really matters, and with that said, let's talk about this one. The biggest highlight by far, from throughout the entirety of this season, is the dynamic between our main two characters, the Doctor and Jo. That was something that I just loved in here. This is obviously the 10th season of the show, so there's been a lot of episodes before it, many Doctor companion dynamics, and I can easily say after finishing this, I loved the third Doctor and Jo and consider them to be one of the best duos from the classic show so far. They are so good together in this season. You can just tell that they are perfect with one another. Each season, the dynamic between these two got better and better. They came to be closer and closer friends, and in season 10, it's at its best. It really feels like they are the two that are meant to be together. Sure, Jon Pertwee has 3 companions in his era, and I've only discussed 2 so far, but I can say that it is very unlikely my opinion will change from season 11, that Jo Grant is the definitive third Doctor companion, because the two just have such fantastic chemistry. Their balance of trying to figure out what's going on and this sprinkled humor in there, and it all just feels so natural, because they started off from season 8 not really getting along that well. She would kind of get in the way, ruin his experiments, do things that didn't quite help him, and he would get annoyed by that. In fact, I think he probably gave her a bit too much of a hard time. But the further you get into this era, the closer those two get, and the more that I just kind of adore them. There's plenty of things that I liked about this season of the show, but that is the definitive thing. I mean, regardless of how good these stories are, what you really want is a strong Doctor-companion dynamic, and they absolutely pulled that off this time. Jon Pertwee, Katie Manning, both so good in this season. And discussing the actual quality of the stories, the things that worked for me, I mean, I really just liked all of the stories in here. There's not a single bad one. I would say that probably the weakest is Frontier in Space, and even that one is good. It's really enjoyable. There's a lot of stuff to like there with the Doctor going to prison and the Master showing up, and I think that sure you could have made it shorter, but what we got is ultimately a really rather fun adventure. It feels like you're really exploring the universe when you're watching that episode because they go to all these different locations. So even that, which I consider to be the weakest probably of the season, has some really good stuff in it. And I like the diversity of the kinds of stories you get in here. All of them are mostly really fun. You start off the story with the 3 Doctors and the Carnival of Monsters, and those 2 stories are just plain fun. I mean, you also have a good villain in Omega, but you can just watch those 2 and just have a blast. And then you come in with Frontier in Space and Planet of the Daleks, and sure, those 2 are both really enjoyable as well, but Planet of the Daleks is not as fun and lighthearted. It is a little bit more of a serious story, but it is of course entertaining, and there's a lot of really good elements within it, and I like the way that the Daleks are utilized, and of course the Green Death is another good story, which I think is, made better by its ending. I really do love the final part of that one, because throughout it, it's solid, it's enjoyable, it's fun, it's entertaining, it's doing some kind of interesting things, but the ending to that story is absolutely what sells it. And you just have these ones that go to all these different kinds of locations, give you something fun, something a little more dark, something a little bit creepy, something a little bit adventurous, something back on Earth, something on a different planet. You go to all these different places, which I think is such a good balance for season 10. I really liked the first Pertwee season with Liz, and this is the first time watching a season that I think one has come close to rivaling that, because this one does so much right. It has some really good stories in here, and maybe on average it isn't quite as solid as season 7, but definitely the Doctor-companion dynamic works even better for me than it did with Liz Shaw and the Third Doctor. It's just really good all around. I think in terms of villains, it's reasonably good throughout here as well. As said, Omega is a good villain, the Daleks are used well. You get the Master to show up in here, and the elements that you have going on in Frontier in Space are kind of cool with the kinds of space politics things that they do in there. I think that's quite fun. Carnival of Monsters, nothing in terms of a great villain. I mean, it works, it's serviceable, but the reason I like that story is more to do with just how much fun it is. I also think the Green Death is a little bit weaker in terms of its villain, definitely compared to something like Planet of the Daleks or the Master or even Omega. It's definitely one of the weaker ones of the season, but the rest of the story absolutely makes up for that. So yeah, villains are a little bit mixed in this season, but overall I would say a good aspect to what makes this season what it is. And in terms of things I didn't like about this season, I mean, there's very little. There's like minor things, maybe a weak cliffhanger, which is the kind of thing I tend to look past anyways, or a villain that didn't completely work for me, or an episode that was maybe a part too long. But mostly, the stuff in here isn't bad. It's just good, it's fun, it's entertaining, it's Doctor Who. There is a ton to like about season 10, and if you haven't seen it yet, then you absolutely have to check it out. Obviously, a big aspect of this season was Joe Grant leaving at the end of it. That is a huge event that happens. It's probably the most important thing that happens in this season, arguably, and it's a great moment. There have been some really good companion exits throughout the show. I really liked Zoe and Jamie leaving. That was beautifully done. But this one is probably about as good. I don't know which is better, but I just love the way that she leaves. I do wish that they hadn't just made another companion go off with a man and then that's how they exit the show, because they've done that at least 2 times before. And I think that's a little bit weak to just say, how do we get rid of this person? Oh, there's a man, they fall in love or something like that. It doesn't always work, but here I think it's executed well. I think that they've done enough with that to the point where you can kind of buy it, and it does make enough sense. And the actual point where the Doctor just leaves in silence as she goes off, I mean, just ending the season in that way, it's kind of tragic, and I love it because that's the final note that we get for this one, is one of the best companions so far leaving the show, gone for good. She's gone. That's it. And I love it. It's a great note to leave viewers off on because it's emotional, and that's not something you get a lot in Classic Who. I think those moments are really rare. A lot of the time, it is just a fun, enjoyable adventure show, but then it comes at you with these moments that really hit you, and that was absolutely one of them, and I think they nailed it, and for the most part, I loved her exit from the show. Overall, I really enjoyed Doctor Who Season 10. There is a ton to love here, from the villains to the adventure to Joe and the Doctor's dynamic, which is easily the best part. You have such a great mix of different kinds of stories. They go to so many different places, and it all contributes to one of the best seasons, I think, of Doctor Who up to this point in its run. There is just so much to enjoy here. There are so many different things. It's got the variety, which is also kind of important for a Doctor Who season, and I love that. I thoroughly enjoyed just about everything in this one. It comes highly recommended from me, and I'm going to give Doctor Who Season 10 a rating of 8.25 out of 10. And that's that, folks. That is the review of Doctor Who Season 10. If you have any thoughts about this season of the show, be sure to leave them down below. I would love to know what you think. Obviously, I really enjoyed it. I'm very positive about it. I'm expecting people are going to be pretty positive, but I'm still curious as to any thoughts you have if you would like to share them. And I do hope to see you around another week from now for a Doctor Who ranking where I rank the episodes from Season 10 of the show. And if I don't see you then, that is absolutely fine, so long as you know that I appreciate your time here today. And with all of that said, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and have a lovely week.
Goodbye. So, the fledgling flies the coop.